A very good morning, everyone. Again, I would like to introduce my colleague from Philippines and our program officer, Miguel Alvaro. He will be taking over for the day's proceedings from now on. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And again, thank you to Professor Ravi for setting the tone of this conference with that keynote address. Thank you very much. And now, as we go deeper into our conference, we will now delve into the different sub-themes of this conference. We will be having 7 sessions up until tomorrow, delving on the different topics that are related to our conference themes. So let me now introduce session 1. Let me invite the session chair and the speakers for this session to please sit here in front on the stage. And while they are walking here in front, let me introduce our session chair. Session 1 is titled Navigating Change, Social Science Responses to Emerging Global Realities. The session chair is Professor Manfred Max Bergman of the University of Basel. I will just be reading shortly his introduction. Professor Bergman is Chair of Social Research and Methodology and Director of the Social Transitions Research Group at the University of Basel, Switzerland. His work on socio-sustainable transitions and social science research methods focuses on sustainability, corporate responsibility, inequality, and population health, with a strong emphasis on actionable insights for policy and practice. As principal investigator and collaborator on projects in India, Singapore, China, South Africa, and Europe, he examines how diverse stakeholders co-produce solutions for just and sustainable futures, most recently through the Proof of Transition Concepts program and the IndoSwiss Research Collaborative. His research highlights how social science can support regionally grounded, transdisciplinary, and future-oriented sustainability transformations. Over the past 30 years, he has advised numerous national and international bodies on research and sustainability, strategy, and policy. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Manfred Max Bergman.
Colleagues, we often say we live in times of change, but the Indo-Pacific today suggests something much stronger. Not just an era of change, but a change of an era. Geopolitical balances are shifting, information and knowledge ecosystems are contested, and regions are either developing new or recuperating historical ambitions. In this context, sustainability must be understood broadly, alongside environmental resilience, to also include the capacity of regions and societies to promote credible knowledge, memory, and solidarity. Our session, Navigating Change, Social Science Responses to Emerging Global Realities, showcases how Asian social sciences move beyond reception and commentary to set agendas. Our 4 country cases, Vietnam, Nepal, the Philippines, and Thailand, are not only sites of change, but factories of new ways of thinking. As we will hear in this session, Asian scholars are not simply reacting to emerging global realities, they are actively shaping new realities which will be understood, and how new realities, ecological, social, and economic, must be administered more sustainably in the service of the 5 Ps: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. Let me welcome to the session Dr. Phan Cao Nhat Anh, who is Deputy Director General of the Vietnam Institute of South Asian, West Asian, and African Studies at the Vietnam Academy of Social Science, where he is Senior Researcher on Security and Political Diplomacy in Asia. He has co-edited multiple works on India-Vietnam relations and Global South cooperation. Dr. Tek Gurung is an independent researcher and development professional with over 30 years' experience with the government of Nepal, UN agencies, and international NGOs on management, sustainable development, and policy. He holds degrees in history, anthropology, and agriculture, and is affiliated with several professional bodies, including Nepal Academy's Culture and Oral History Department. Dr. Jan Carlo Punongbayan is assistant professor at the University of the Philippines School of Economics and a weekly columnist for Rappler, the leading Filipino online news organization. His research covers microeconomics, economic history, education, and development, and he is the author of False Nostalgia, the Marcos Golden Age Myth, and How to Debunk Them. In 2024, he received the Outstanding Young Men Award for Economics. Last but not least, Assistant Professor Dr. Nataporn Tayongrak is head of Department of History at the Sinan Karin Wiru, apologies for mangling this, Sinakarin Wiru University in Thailand. A specialist in Southeast Asia history and Thai-Cambodian relations, she has published widely and contributed to national scholarly projects. She focuses on cross-border history and civic engagement to promote national cooperation. I'm very honored to chair the session, and I'm very much looking forward to your input and then subsequent discussion. May I please ask now Dr. Phan Cao Nhat Anh to make a short presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Bergman. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Great honor to be here to present my presentation. So I'm going to talk about Vietnam social scientist scientific research adapt to a new international integration process. My presentation is divided into 5 parts. The first, new international context. The second, our opportunity and challenges for Vietnam. And the third, international integration perspective. And the fourth, social science and humanity role and contribution. And the last is conclusion. Firstly, I would like to talk about new international context. So as you know, the world situation go through different stages. World War II ended, and the world was divided into a bipolar system, the US and Soviet Union. It was called Cold War. So the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. So the world entered unipolar system with American domination. And into the 21st century, a remarkable crisis appeared. For instance, September 11, 2001, and the second was Lehman Shock, 2008. So this crisis affected American #1 position in the world. So in 2010, so China surpassed Japan by becoming the #2 in the world. So at the same time, China also took aggressive action in South China Sea, intending to dominate this region. So China has abandoned its strategy of high your strength by your time. And China is challenging America #1 in the world. So the US identified China as the biggest challenges that United States is facing in 21st century. And China is only country challenging China-US. And the US-China relationships will be confrontation, competition, and competitive. And we are witnessing unprecedented competition between China and America. So we also see many crises in the world. For instance, conflicts between India and Pakistan, Israel and Hamas, and of course, Ukraine crisis. So far, we don't know when Ukraine crisis will finish. So we also see non-traditional crisis in the world. We can see food security, water security, and climate change. For instance, heat waves in South Asia, and floods in Sri Lanka and Vietnam, and we also see water resources security in Mekong sub-region. So now we are living in challenging war. It was called Biennial War, B-A-N-I. Biennial stands for B, Britain, A, answers, N, nonlinear, and I, incomprehensible. In this context, it's difficult to anticipate, it's difficult to understand this war. So now, I would like to talk about opportunity and challenges for Vietnam. So, although the world witnessing many conflicts, but almost countries still prioritize, pursue security, peace, and development. So the way of technology such as artificial intelligence, AI, and Internet of Things can help increase labor productivity and enhancing the competitiveness of the economy. After the COVID-19, so in restructuring of the global supply chain, so Vietnam become attractive destination. Vietnam become one country in China's +1 strategy. And Vietnam has signed 16 FTA, including many important agreements such as CPTPP and AASSREC. As a new generation FTA facilitates a market process and promote institutional reform. And the development trend in new economic model such as digital economy, green economy, is creating possibility for sustainable development. So now I would like to talk about challenges. So fierce strategic competition between major power such as US and China, so can put pressure on Vietnam, two sides, reducing the space independence, and protectionism and anti-globalization trend rise on many countries. So this could negative effects favor international environment for Vietnam's development. So for Vietnam, responding to non-traditional security challenges require large resources and effective governance capacity. It's significant for Vietnam to meet high requirement of FTA. So Vietnam is under pressure from international community to reduce emission and develop renewable energy and protect environment. So now I would like to talk about international integration perspective. If you follow Vietnam for a long time, you know that Vietnam's international integration perspective changed over time from economic integration to comprehensive integration. There is no enough time, so I don't talk a lot about Vietnam's perspective. But the first time Vietnam proposed the policy of international economic integration is 2001, and this year, 2025, so Vietnam introduced resolution number 59 on international integration. So this resolution has 4 specific goals: international economic integration and international integration in politics, defense, and security, and culture, etc., and improving capacity and political resilience for international integration. So I would like to emphasize that. So economic integration is very important, paramount. So in the current context, it's necessary to prevent a risk of war and conflicts and promote the role and strength of defense diplomacy and public security and diplomacy. And international integration includes 3 pillars: party diplomacy, state diplomacy, and people-to-people diplomacy. And Vietnam must integrate into the world with management, leadership, and compliance with global standards. So now I would like to talk about social science and humanity. Of course, social science is very important. The role contributes are building civic awareness of patriotism in human development and providing scientific and practical argument for planning national development policy and guidelines, and effective national governance, solve social problems, and responding to contemporary and global challenges, and preserving and promoting national culture identity. So I would like to emphasize the Vietnam Academy of Social Science. Today, Vietnam Academy of Social Science Vice President Professor Bergman also is attending here. So Vietnam Academy of Social Science has scientific and providing a scientific argument for information and development and country's comprehensive renovation policy, and providing scientific argument and advice to party and states of Vietnam. So in this context, socialists have answered main question. For instance, what is current trend of the war situation? In that context, how does Vietnam integrate? Economic integration is very most important, but with economic development, model is suitable for Vietnam. As you know, now Vietnam is discussing about private economic sector. So private sector, how is can play role in Vietnam? So how does Vietnam maintain balance between the US and China? In the contact competition between China and the US, I believe that Vietnam can learn from India. So now India is implementing strategic autonomy policy. So I believe that Vietnam can learn from India. So now Vietnam foreign policy is quite suitable. Vietnam don't have allies. Vietnam maintain balance between China and America. So in this context, how Vietnam can do? So I believe that Vietnam social science cooperates with leading scientific institutions and research institutes in the world to determine appropriate approach and focus of cooperation. And social science pay attention to and apply advanced management method and total in the world, upgrade standards and regulation in the research, and evaluate research according to international standards, and improve the quality of human resources in social science research. And today, international conference is a good chance for Vietnam Academy of Social Science. We, researcher, is attending here, so learn many things from this international conference. So now I would like to talk about conclusion. In the new era of development of Vietnam, social science and humanity continue to play a very important role. And social science is the leader of national development and building the civic awareness and patriotism and providing scientific and practical argument. And social science also develop thinking and orientation for international integration, and social science creating driving force for Vietnam to develop. It is my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation. May I now ask Dr. Tech Gurung to also present?
Thank you very much. Respected Chair, distinguished scholars, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor for me to be able to stand here and present this paper on changing global realities of alliance and non-alliance politics that has implication on Nepal and probably similar to many other countries. Here, I'll focus on very specific ideas, and you can read detail in my paper, which I have already submitted. Well, allow me to begin with by briefly touching on the global context that we are living in a world and time that the world is changing. The power reconfiguration is happening, and the post-Cold War assumptions of a stable world led by US is fading, and the situation has become much more complex and contested. Several trends illustrate this shift. We can see that NATO is enduringly expanding, and BRICS is expanding also, and is also rebranding itself. And we can also see the revival of the non-aligned movement. And then we can also see formation of minilaterals like Quad and AUKUS. And there are also strategic recalibration of the West that in relation to China, initially they were thinking of decoupling, but now they have moved to the de-risking strategy. So together, these have created a multipolar world where the influence is dispersed and the alliances are fluid. I think we all agree to that. This is not only about military and economy, but also about how knowledge is created, shared, and valued. I believe it is true that knowledge is never just knowledge. It brings its own allies and opponents. In this sense, knowledge itself becomes a geopolitical arena, edge. Universities, think tanks, journals, research networks have become instruments of global influence. We can see that EU uses its research program to actually show its value and leadership, whereas the US uses educational exchanges like Fulbrights as a form of soft power, and China uses Confucius Institutes and scholarships as part of Belt and Road vision. So the phenomena, we can say this is a power or knowledge diplomacy, so which significantly affect countries like Nepal and many others. Because Nepal has a unique position that in terms of the foreign policy foundation, that non-alignment is enshrined in its constitution, and geographically, Nepal is situated between the pioneers of non-aligned movement, India and China, and at the same time, Nepal is engaging with United States, Europe, and multilateral institutions. All these actually gives a degree of flexibility. However, it also is not without risk, especially as we can see, India and China are competing vigorously, and US-China relation rivalry is sharpening. So all these are about the situation of the global context. Now let me move on to the most important part of my presentation today, how these shifts actually influence in Nepal's social science landscape. Nepal, as I showed, that is in between two pioneers of non-aligned movement. Let me highlight key factors, 5 factors, where global politics intersect Nepal's academic life. Number 1, the funding and agenda setting. Nepal lacks consolidated data on social science funding, but one reality is clear that our research system is largely donor dependent. Therefore, the Western donors support, for example, the governance, human rights, democracy, and gender themes, whereas China supports cultural exchange, language programs, and infrastructure-related studies, and that avoids politically sensitive topics. And India supports projects linked to shared history and culture, and multilateral agencies emphasize on development, poverty eradication, and climate resilience matters. The result is fragmented landscape where research priorities are often reflected that of donor interests rather than the Nepal's pressing national needs, and such as migration, federalism, inequality, and indigenous rights are like issues in Nepal. The second aspect is that access to data, methods, and collaboration. Nepali researchers face structural barriers, particularly that paywalls and subscription fees restricts access to top journals, and geopolitical divides mean that US-funded projects avoid Chinese partnership and vice versa. And South-South, the silver line is that the South-South networks provide opportunities, however, they remain still underdeveloped, and we heard this morning that we are the power which still needs to be built in our area. The number 3 is epistemological debates or contestation. Social science in Nepal is still very much Indo-American theory-based, which often fail to capture Nepal's own history, language, and culture, which is a bit of pity. However, change is underway that calls for decolonizing knowledge are growing. There are efforts for diversifying approaches and legitimizing non-Western epistemologies. There is renewed appreciation for indigenous knowledge system. So the challenge, however, with us is that how to avoid the fragmentation of all these to ensure that the pluralism actually strengthens us rather than divides us is a challenge for us. Number 4 point is institutional governance and academic freedom that you can see in the in this pentagonal diagram, that Nepali universities face, the academic establishments and Nepali universities still face serious structural problems like politicized appointment of high-level positions such as vice chancellors, rectors, deans, and so on. And the influence of student unions aligned with political parties is also another issue. And there are external pressures, not to mention. Topics on considered sensitives such as Tibet, border disputes, and geographic rivalries are considered as sensitive, and people try to avoid that. The challenge actually challenges undermine the academic autonomy and weaken our institution at a time when intellectual interdependence or independence is most needed. So this is number 4. Number 5 is research dissemination and quality assurance. Nepal's academic visibility remains relatively low because very few journals are indexed internationally. Predatory journals flourish in the absence of strong quality controls, and peer review culture is still to be strengthened, and no strong national policy assurance system exists. So all these create the credibility gap that prevents Nepali scholarship from fully participating in global debates. So that means I am trying to assess the situation, how we present or project ourselves in the global debate. Having said all these, what Nepal should do and is trying to do is that Nepal definitely needs to be very pragmatic. We know that in foreign policy, hedging means balancing multiple relationships without fully committing to one side. And the same logic applies to our research system also. Therefore, Nepal needs to diversify funding so no single donor dominates us, and similarly collaborate broadly with a wide range of supporters or development partners, and balance global theories with local epistemologies, and strengthen institutional autonomy so partnership do not compromise academic freedom. So I believe hedging is not just an indecision, it is the most practical strategy for small countries like Nepal. I believe this is also applicable to so many other countries operating within the complex power dynamics. Therefore, Nepal is to reform national research policy for securing funding and for ensuring quality and autonomy. I think with this, I would like to conclude. Thank you all, and thank you Nepal Academy for appointing me for this presentation. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to now ask Dr. Punongbayan to please present.
Good morning, everyone. I'm JC Punongbayan, and I'm very thankful to the Philippine Social Science Council, represented by Mr. Will Villon is here, and the AASSREC for the invitation to speak this morning. Today, I'll talk about reclaiming the past, how Filipino social scientists have responded to Marcos-era golden age myths, and how this fits into a broader global struggle against authoritarian historical revisionism. I'll focus on 3 things. First, a conceptual frame around authoritarian nostalgia and digital autocratization. Second, the recent multidisciplinary wave of work on the Marcos legacy. And third, what this tells us about the role of scholarship in defending democratic memory. This paper starts from a simple puzzle. Why are so many people around the world, including the Philippines, nostalgic for authoritarian rule? In the Philippine case, we see golden age narratives about the Marcos dictatorship from 1972 to 1986, supposedly a time of growth, order, and discipline, even though economic and historical research instead points to crisis, inequality, and repression. Digital platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok gave Marcosian revisionism a long head start, normalizing these myths and helping pave the way for Marcos Jr.'s victory in 2022. The paper situates the recent boom in Filipino social science work on martial law within this wider context of global democratic backsliding and contested memory. Conceptually, I link three strands. First, authoritarian nostalgia, a sentimental longing for dictatorships imagined as more stable, orderly, or efficient than democracy, often glossing over who paid the price for that order. Second, a new wave of autocratization, where erosion happens less through coups and more through information control, hollowed-out institutions, and gradual norm-breaking. Third, digital authoritarianism. Regimes and dynasties now use disinformation, targeted messaging, and algorithmic amplification to seed revisionist histories in real time. Against that, I frame the social sciences as counter-institutions, slow evidence-based spaces that reconstruct factual records. But there's a built-in temporal asymmetry here. Propaganda is fast and well-funded, while scholarship is slow and under-resourced. That asymmetry is central to the story. Now, in the Philippines, martial law sits at the intersection of living memory and active reinterpretation. Survivors are still alive, yet their testimony competes daily with polished online narratives. Economic research shows that the early 1970s boom was largely debt-driven and ultimately collapsed into crisis and lost growth by the 1980s, a trajectory far from a golden age. After 1986, there was no comprehensive truth commission, curricular reform was slow, and many patronage and crony networks during the dictatorship persisted. From the early 2010s onward, studies document how social media platforms normalized pro-Marcos narratives. The recent wave of scholarship is strong, but it is also trying to catch up with an entrenched digital ecosystem. Against this backdrop, we now see a notable multidisciplinary surge of work on the Marcos regime. On the authoritarian state and institutions, research has reconstructed how Marcos built his authoritarian project and how some earlier scholarship unintentionally normalized martial law by underplaying its violence and corruption. Edited volumes bring together historians, political scientists, economists like myself, sociologists, and cultural scholars to show how crisis and repression were experienced across different social groups. On technocracy and political economy, economists have revisited macroeconomic performance under Marcos, documenting the shift from initial growth to debt-fueled collapse. My own book, False Nostalgia, tries to bring these findings to a wider public in an accessible language. There's also growing work on Marcos's technocrats, showing how they promoted liberalization and reform, but were constrained by crony interests. So this is my book, actually. I brought a copy with me. Traveling all the way from the Philippines. This one was published by Ateneo de Manila University Press, one of the top universities in the Philippines. But this book is just a sample of the recent scholarship in social science. Many books have been written by social scientists in recent years, trying to catch up with this information. Now, a second cluster in social science research in the Philippines looks at long-run economic damage, memory, and dynasties. Some studies estimate long-run output losses from the 1980s crisis and place the Philippines in comparative perspective, questioning simple authoritarian growth miracle narratives. On memory and affect, scholars examine how desires for order and prosperity and frustrations with post-1986 politics are channeled into longing for an imagined authoritarian past. Survey research shows that positive views of Marcos Sr. strongly predict support for Marcos Jr., and that such attitudes had already crystallized by the mid-1990s before social media, suggesting that online disinformation reinforces older narratives. Work on political dynasties and the 2022 election framed the Marcos return as part of a broader dance of the dynasties in an oligarchic democracy where family networks, money, and memory combine. Another front is cultural politics. One line of work reads Marcos as a scholarly author, unpacking ghost-written multi-volume works and official histories that wrapped authoritarian rule in a scholarly veneer. Other studies examine dead body politics. For example, the burial of Marcos Sr. in the Hero Cemetery or Libingan ng mga Bayani, and how his body became a site of symbolic struggle over legitimacy. Film and music are central as well. Cinema during the dictatorship has been interpreted as a popular democratic critique of authoritarianism, while contemporary songs, films, and performances act as counter-memories for younger audiences. Researchers also show how moral panics, such as drug scares and crime waves, can be mobilized to legitimize authoritarian projects. Cultural production therefore becomes both a tool of legitimation and a resource for resistance. The digital battlefield is crucial. Communication research in the Philippines maps YouTube networks that systematically amplify pro-Marcos content, showing how channels cross-promote one another and create an ecosystem of network political brokerage. Work on TikTok campaigning shows how disinformation has become an organized political economy involving content farms, PR firms, influencers, and coordinated messaging blending entertainment and propaganda. Other studies track the visual and verbal rebranding of the Marcoses and dissect viral myths like Taliano Gold as sticky, easily shareable fabrications. On the counter side, books like Marcos Lies and My Own False Nostalgia try to systematically debunk these stories. Historical work links the mosquito press under the dictatorship to today's troll farms, highlighting long-running continuities in propaganda infrastructures. Digital disinformation is therefore not random noise, it is structured, labor-intensive, and political. Now, to see what is distinctive about the Philippines, the paper also looks at regional comparisons. In Indonesia, nostalgia for Suharto's new order is associated with weaker support for democracy and greater acceptance of illiberal measures. In South Korea, new right efforts to reframe authoritarian rule as developmental operate in a context shaped by strong truth commissions, apologies, and well-funded memorials. Taiwan has institutionalized transitional justice for the White Terror through archives, museums, and reparations. In India and Japan, textbook battles over national history and responsibility have been recurring for years. All these cases show common patterns of authoritarian nostalgia and contested memory, but very different institutional responses. Now, relative to these cases, several features stand out in the Philippines. First, nostalgia is strongly rooted in everyday economic memory rather than mainly in security or national glory. Second, there has been no comprehensive truth commission on martial law, and state-led memorialization remains weak and fragmented. Third, universities, NGOs, churches, survivors' organizations, and independent media shoulder much of the memory work that elsewhere is partly institutionalized by the state. Fourth, the Philippines has unusually rich research on YouTube and TikTok ecosystems and viral myths, making it kind of a bellwether for digital-era historical revisionism. This leads to the idea of social science playing catch-up. Post-1986 reforms were partial. There were no broad truth commissions, slow integration of martial law into school curricula, and incomplete accountability for cronies and human rights violators. These gaps made it easier for dynasties to rehabilitate their image and return to power. By the early 2010s, revisionist content already saturated major platforms, Serious scholarship by design moves more slowly. It needs archives, data reconstruction, interviews, and peer review. The consequence is that misperceptions about economic performance and repression became widespread in the Philippines, especially among younger generations. Those attitudes fed into support for Marcos Jr. and normalized the idea of a golden age. So what can social sciences do differently without abandoning rigor? First, we need more timely research, studying campaigns, narratives, and myths as they unfold. For example, through live mapping disinformation networks or rapid response data during elections. That requires flexible, collaborative designs and more open data and methods. Second, at an institutional level, confronting disinformation and engaging the public should be treated as core scholarly work. Promotion, tenure, and funding systems need to recognize public-facing outputs and not treat them as extracurricular. Now, finally, the state still matters in structuring memory. The Human Rights Violations Victims Memorial Commission, or MEMCOM for short, was created in the Philippines to document abuses and honor victims of martial law. It has worked with scholars and survivors, but remains woefully underfunded and politically sidelined. The proposed martial law museum has been repeatedly delayed, so the country still lacks a permanent national institution dedicated to dictatorship-era abuses. Compared with memorials in places like Gwangju or Taiwan's white terror sites, the gap is striking. Strengthening the commission and completing the museum are not just symbolic. They are investments in democratic infrastructure and in a durable, evidence-based account of the past. To conclude, Marcosian Golden Age myths are one instance of a broader global pattern of authoritarian nostalgia and democratic backsliding. And Filipino social sciences now offer the most comprehensive reconstruction of martial law since 1986 across economics, political science, and cultural and media studies. The challenge is to move from reactive fact-checking to proactive shaping of memory infrastructures, scholarship, curricula, and memorial institutions. Early signs of nostalgia for the Duterte years, which ran from 2016 to 2022, suggest the cycle can repeat if scholarship and institutions again lag behind. Ultimately, defending democratic futures requires not only remembering what had happened, but building the capacity to interpret and learn from it in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As the last presenter, before we have a discussion, I would like to ask Taeyong Rak to please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so sorry about the inconvenience about my slide presentation. But before I start, I'm Natapon from Thailand, Bangkok. Before I start, I'd like to mention that I slightly adjust this one. It's okay. Adjust the title of my presentation so it better reflects the main idea. Today, I want to rethink how we usually understand regional relations in the Indo-Pacific. Sorry. Yes. Most discussion about international relations in Indo-Pacific are very state-centered The focus on big issues like geopolitics, security, and decisions made by political elite. But this approach overlooks the real influence of local history, shared culture, and everyday economic connection, especially between neighboring countries like Thailand and Cambodia. My main argument is that relations between states are deeply shaped by bottom-up forces, such as shared history, local identities, cross-border trade, and belief systems among people living along the border. By using local history as our lens, we can challenge traditional state-centered views and help push forward the idea of decolonizing knowledge in regional study. My research question, two common assumptions in international relations. First, methodology, nationalism, the idea that nation-state is the natural unit of analysis. And the second, the treating the state as a black box, ignoring what happened inside or below it. To understand today's conflict, we must look at the historical root behind them. For example, the Thai idea of geo-body shows how fear of losing territory, shaping during the colonial period, still influence strong nationalist emotion. Today, even when then dispute areas have little strategic value. Before nationalism, borderlands were more fluid, move freely, political control overlap, and ethnic community mixed. Local people had their own way of organizing life and dealing with neighboring groups. Recognizing the help us see the local knowledge is a powerful but underused resource for creating non-Western theory and promoting long-term peace. Local history is the history lived and told by non-state actors, local community, trader, monk, and cross-border networks. Historically, the border was not a strict line. People moved back and forth, married across communities, share markets, and visit the same temple. But during the colonial period, new borders were drawn, and with them came strong fear of losing territory. The fear still influences today and often turn border issue into the big national debate. However, when we look at the local history, we see a different story, one based on long-term cooperation and shared culture. Its key elements include kinship network, family ties that existed long before the modern border, informal economies, daily trade, labor movement, and shared use of resources. Shared spiritual network, temple, monk, and pilgrimage route used by people on both sides. My first finding focused on the Priyaviha or Pravihan in Thai temple. National narrative often described as a strict territorial dispute between Thailand and Cambodia. But local history shows a different story for centuries. The temple was seen as a shared spiritual and ecological space, not a zero-sum possession. Life in this area was connected, not divided. Colonial maps impose a top-down border with cash, with local memory and culture practice. The 1962 International Court of Justice solved the legal question, but did not resolve the deeper historical and cultural meaning attached to the site. This gap allowed tension to continue, reflecting the endowment effect where each side overvalue what they believe in there. The second finding is about the state of local economy. For hundreds of years, Thai and Cambodia border community depend on each other. For example, rock salt from the northeast of Thailand, and for Cambodian people use it for do the bahok or fish fermented, and Cambodia took Thailand took fish from the Cambodia. Even the Rongkeur market, the market near the border, as a major exchange point, have been active for generations. When border closed after 1975, local people quickly adapted by creating new informal trade routes and market. Even during serious military clash in 2008 and 2011 and until now, this local network continued to function, acting as social safety net that kept everyday peace. From the finding, I propose two major policy directions. One, the rethinking of the conflict resolution. State-centered strategy, like using legal argument or military pressure, only fix the surface of the problem. If we want real and lasting solution, we need to change how we look at this issue. Instead of seeing the temple along the Ronglek mountain range as a place that one country must own, we should see them as a shared heritage, cultural site that belong to people on both sides of the border. I propose creating joint local community with villager, monk, and provincial officers from both countries. They would manage tourism, conservation, and economic benefit. This structure would reduce nationalist manipulation, protect the site, and support border community directly, which help maintain stable peace. The second, sustainable development with local knowledge. Putting local voice at the center help break colonial idea of rigid border and zero-sum thinking. Cross-border community-based natural resource management can turn dispute zones like the Dongrek Mountain into shared ecological management area. And regional framework like the GMS must ensure the local SME and community receive fair benefits, not just large investors. To conclude, my research provides a new way to understand regional relations. Grassroots force help stabilize tension better than top-down strategies. Local history shows long tradition of cooperation. Local knowledge is essential for any lasting solution. Moving forward, regional policymakers must look beyond high-level geopolitics and listen to the reality lived by people on the ground. My call to action is to integrate local voice into foreign policy to the decolonization of knowledge. Future research will compare local dispute resolution model to create a clearer framework for including local knowledge into regional policy making. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. We have a little bit of time. I've prepared two questions. My first question is, when you think of the Indo-Pacific, what new role do you see for the social sciences in helping people, especially maybe young people, in very fast changing times? So what kind of new role do you see for the social sciences in the Indo-Pacific?
Oh, I think the social sciences have a pivotal role in this, in the sense of, for example, imparting on the youth how relevant our research is in their everyday lives. In the Philippines, my fellow economists and I, for example, we have made podcasts, video explainers to try to reach out to the younger people, even creating our own TikTok accounts so that we can showcase some of our research and encourage, in fact, young people to get into the social sciences themselves as a viable career path for them. So I think, well, of course, as I mentioned in my talk, it's kind of difficult if academia prioritizes, for example, scholarly publications rather than social media presence or explainer videos, for example. So I think the reforms there need to be institutional as well, because it's quite difficult for us social scientists to kind of take on that responsibility without incentives and support coming from the institutions that we are working with.
Okay, I won't quite let you get off so easily, because what I hear from you is that we just need to change our communication, our ways of communication, but otherwise, I didn't hear anything about a new role for the social science. So you basically, if I understand correctly, you're saying, let's just continue what we're doing, but just let's be better communicators and use social media and various other things. Otherwise, the model is fine.
Well, of course, there are reforms that we need to do in the social sciences, in the way, for example, we attack many of our research questions. I think one of the trends we're seeing in the US, for example, would be a greater reliance on quantitative methods and the credibility revolution that first kind of seeded in the natural sciences and then went into economics and then are now becoming a lot more popular in the social sciences like political science and even sociology. So, of course, for many social sciences, we kind of rely on qualitative methods, but more and more, I think the credibility revolution is kind of emphasizing the role of data and credible identification strategy so that much of our research can seep over more effectively into policy, just like what Dr. Ravi had mentioned earlier in her talk. So I think the approach needs to be two-pronged. We need to kind of revisit our methodologies in the social sciences on the one hand, and also become better communicators. I think that's a two-pronged approach we should tackle.
All right, thank you.
Shall I continue with the same question?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, being the new member of AASSREC, I had been very new and learning here actually. And also Nepal not being directly linked to Indo-Pacific because we are landlocked and in between two big countries. Actually, in Nepal, we talk less about Indo-Pacific issues, which perhaps needs to be talked more and understood better. And for that matter, I think my presentation was more on how we are now and how we are handling things. And then now we need a better policy and research methodology in Nepal to make understand that how much it is important, the Indo-Pacific issues, whereby we benefit not just Nepal, but also the others. So from that point of view, I think we need a research policy, better research policy in Nepal in order to consolidate the knowledge as well as inform better in the country, whereby we become better partners with the global knowledge and global debates. That's how I feel. But I think we can continue further. Okay, thank you.
Great. New role, I repeat, what is the new role for the social sciences in a very fast-changing Indo-Pacific to help people and maybe especially young people?
Can I share my opinion? Okay. Thank you so much. It's a very interesting question. So I think that Indo-Pacific is a new norm, it's a new initiative. We can come back 2007. So at that time, Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe proposed Indo-Pacific initiative, including 4 countries, Japan, India, America, and Australia. So I think the reason is very important. So it's not only Japan. Many countries also propose Indo-Pacific initiative, such as Korea, India, and of course ASEAN. So Vietnam is included in ASEAN. So Vietnam also support ASEAN Indo-Pacific initiative. So now European countries also propose Indo-Pacific initiative.
So in the Indo-Pacific region, I think there are many areas: economic, social science, climate change, and recently we emphasize on military cooperation. I think Indo-Pacific initiative is very important. It is cooperation mechanism. Yeah. So I think social science is very important. So now, of course, in case of Vietnam, so Vietnam social science have to research what area so we can cooperate, what area we cannot cooperate. So now, for instance, I think just climate change or social science or economic is very easy to cooperate. But some area is quite sensitive to cooperate, such as military cooperation. Yeah. So, but I think Indo-Pacific initiative is very important in this time. We can cooperate in many countries to facing many issues in the world now. Yeah, it's my opinion.
Okay. Yes. For me, I have many students right now. They are introvert, but we cannot deny that we live in the society. So I think the role of the social science is for encourage them to understand the real world. It's not just the real world in the computer. Is that mean? So, but I think it's very complicated for them to understand what the real social science. To do that, we need to encourage them and make awareness that our side is very important for every human, I think. And for me, personally, I think we need to more integrate about every social side together for make something happen that makes every aspect in the big issue or something that the problem of the world. So I think it's very important to let the younger people know about that social science is very important for them.
Okay, but again, maybe a similar comment that I had with regard to earlier is that you're saying that we need to just be better communicators of business as usual. So would you say that the new role of social science is just to adapt better communication strategies, but the content and what it is doing and how it's doing is fine?
I think right now, I can say that now in Thailand we have conflict with Cambodia. For me, I think it's very important to the younger people learn about the history of the two countries for make understand. And if they learn about the social science or history or something like that, they understand that the history that make the past. And we don't use the present to judge in right now. So I think it's make reduce the conflict between the two countries.
Okay. My last question, maybe a brief answer, because I would love to also maybe give the audience an opportunity to ask one or two questions. If you had to name one single practical idea for cross-border cooperation, most of you talked about cooperation. If you had one single idea for a practical idea for cross-border cooperation among Indo-Pacific countries, especially among social scientists, what would that be? Something that you could do after this conference, maybe next week or next month. One single idea, one practical idea for cross-border cooperation amongst Asian social scientists.
Yes, for me, I hope that I will use because I teach students in social study as well, so there will be a teacher in the school in Thailand. So they need to integrate about the curriculum, something like that. So for me, I think it's very important that I try to create about the curriculum that's mix about the economy, political science together. But last time, long time ago, we have the project together in Southeast Asia, in the shared culture together for reduce the conflict. I think that it's very important to do something cross-border, like do curriculum together to maybe I can do with Cambodia, but now the situation is not good. So like my research, I do with the Cambodian scholar as well for the history.
I would like to share my opinion. So in the Indo-Pacific, so of course, I come from Vietnam, so Vietnam is Southeast Asia country. So recently, I feel that ASEAN centrality is weakening. Yeah. So my initiative regarding promotes cooperation between ASEAN to other countries. For instance, ASEAN and India. So for instance, in Vietnam case, so I know that now Vietnam and India relationship is a comprehensive strategic partnership. But in fact, Vietnam and India turnover is not high, about 20 billion US dollar. I think it is not commensurate with potential between these two countries. So now in India, so I would like, I hope that India can promote cooperation with ASEAN countries. Yeah. So I believe that.
Well, I think we are sort of disjoint in many ways, that we do not connect, although it's not a new idea, we do not connect the local thing to the global, regional or global ideas. Probably we are already connected, but still our connections in the given changing context probably needs to be further studied, perhaps. And that will help us understand, and makes us and brings us to the same page. Probably we are in different stages of understanding the issues at the global level. So maybe we need to bring all together, and that probably needs a kind of joint research whereby we understand, eminent researchers along different countries come together and talk about exactly what we want. Probably, given our different stature of the countries, we have different interests, and to the deep psychic point of view that we consider because of our individual countries' interests, etc. So, in order to bring everybody's ideas together and remain with that same idea, probably we need that kind of research, which we don't have yet, I guess.
Okay, I won't quite let you off the hook. I will go to the next speaker, but I just already say, I would like to hear from you one concrete, you spoke like a perfect researcher. We need to study this, and we need, of course, a budget to study this. We bring people together. Think of a concrete way of how you would start this process of getting people together to agree on an agenda. What would that be? So we will go to the next speaker, and then we'll finish with you.
Yes, I think it's crucial for us not to be afraid to tackle issues in each other's countries. For example, in the Philippines, we were invited to review this book that's being written by Japanese scholars on the Philippine economy. So I was quite surprised that so many Japanese scholars were working on historical Philippine economic data. So I think that kind of emphasizes or illustrates that, for example, there's a lot of interest in the Philippines on studying, for example, how Vietnam has become a lot more successful in the past couple of decades. So I think that's the main barrier in cross-regional studies. We need to embrace our diversity and not be afraid of tackling one another's issues. And I guess there are a few good substitutes to, for example, inviting each other to workshops. If we do anything remotely related to another colleague from another country, we should invite them. I think there's a few good substitutes to that kind of face-to-face interaction.
I think partially my answer is already covered there. In addition, I think that probably I have a background of understanding the migratory history of people after the, which is related to human evolution and migratory history of people. I'm trying to establish how people reached to the country now known as Nepal. Perhaps we are all connected because of the migratory history of the humankind.
What would you do next month?
Well, at the moment, I'm doing that research, so maybe I'll continue that. That's probably, I'll have a platform perhaps sometime to present that too. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. We are out of time, but if there are one or two questions, or maybe comments on, maybe you have a position on what I've just asked about concrete ideas in order, practical ideas for cross-border cooperation that you could already transfer, not have to wait for 2 years and then come to a similar conference?
Yes, thank you so much to all speakers and also Mr. Moderator. I'm Sam from Cambodia, and it is very interesting to listen. And I'm so happy to listen to the presentation of Dr. Natapon from Thailand on the conflict between Cambodia and Thailand. I'm happy that you talk about peace. Actually, our two countries, the neighboring countries, we share like culture and tradition. And I like your word when you say our people, we depend on each other on economic. But one word that I think it is, maybe it is not right to mention. I mean, because we have to, in my own perspective, we have to respect international laws and also the international treaties that already recognized by the two countries and international community. For example, the ICJ 1962 and other France Sham Treaty 1907 and 04 and other international law. I think those are, and also ASEAN Charter, maybe those are the main documents that can bring the real peace for the region and also for ASEAN. Like the speaker from Vietnam, I mean, because we all are the neighboring countries and we are the ASEAN members. So I think one respected international laws or ASEAN Charter would be the best mechanism for all countries to follow. I think that is very important. I think we would be more than happy to welcome any cooperation between students and students, because I believe that only the best way to let our people understand each other. I think one of the mistakes is that when we let the media to play the big role, and when we let politicians who just gain popularity and gain a big vote from the people, I think that kind of activity will lead to misunderstanding between the real requirement of the people. Yeah, that is what I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. One quick comment or question. We have time for one quick comment or question. No? Oh, okay, go ahead, please.
I think the challenge that we have started with is, the need to find common ground to focus on the challenges that we are facing. But I think the point is that when you take the diversity of social science disciplines and the things that they do, I think, this is really only a very small part of what is happening even today. So I think the challenge is, really to, get the social scientists to think in terms of, coming out with ideas that would really focus attention on some of these things. That is something that is not, very easy, because, social scientists do not necessarily agree that our job is to basically focus on the global and local challenges and focus on policy-oriented research. I think that is something that we are struggling with, I think, wherever we are. Thank you.
Good, so I thank you very much for participation in the break. I would like to hear what you would like to propose next month toward this direction, but we will do this in the break. Thank you so very much, everybody, for participating.
Thank you very much again to Professor Bergman and our four speakers, our four panelists. That was session 1, Navigating Change, Social Science Responses to Emerging Global Realities. And this is only the first session of many sessions and many presentations yet to come in the coming in the coming hours and until tomorrow. So, but for now, morning tea is now served, and we will resume for session 2 at 11:30. Morning tea is served here at this side, and please please come back here at 11:30 for our second session. Thank you.